You know, if I have to hear one more story about an AI writing a wedding toast, I might lose it.
Or the Pope in a puffer jacket.
Exactly. We're so obsessed with these parlor tricks of artificial intelligence. But while everyone's looking at that stuff, there is a massive and I think much more important revolution happening in the background.
You're talking about the plumbing of the global economy.
The supply chain. The invisible backbone that gets my coffee beans from, I don't know, Colombia to my cup.
Right.
And we tend to assume that AI in that space is just plug and play. You buy the Logistics Bot 3000, plug it in, and poof, efficiency.
If only it were that simple.
Right. And the research we're looking at today suggests it is absolutely not that simple. In fact, it turns out that adopting AI in a supply chain isn't really a technical problem at all.
No, it's a psychological one. It really is. We're digging into a fascinating study that argues the hard infrastructure of a supply chain is actually determined by, well, soft feelings. Specifically, how managers perceive the AI. Do they think it's useful? And just as important, do they think it's easy to use?
So user experience basically dictates global trade.
In a nutshell, yes.
Okay, let's get into the source. We are looking at a 2025 study. It's called Perceptions of AI Adoption and Their Impact on Supply Chain Learning.
And this is by Guilherme Luz Tortorella and his team.
And to set the scene, they didn't look at Silicon Valley. They surveyed 206 managers in Brazil. Now, I want to pause there. Why Brazil? Is that just random, or is there something specific about that market that makes it relevant for all of us?
No, the location is crucial here. Brazil is actually a perfect stress test for this kind of tech.
How so?
Well, first off, it's a massive emerging hub. AI investment there is projected to top, $2.4 billion by 2025? So they're all in.
Okay, so they're not lagging behind.
Far from it.
Yeah.
But Brazil also has these significant infrastructure challenges. Volatile logistics, complex tax codes, huge distances.
Some managers there don't have the luxury of using software that's just kind of helpful.
Exactly. It's if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. Logic. If we can see how perception shapes AI adoption in that environment, those lessons apply pretty much everywhere.
Okay, so before we get to the psychology part, we need to define the playing field. The paper talks a lot about supply chain learning, SCL. It sounds like a corporate training seminar. What does it actually mean?
It does sound a bit bureaucratic, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But think of learning here not as one person reading a book. It's the network adapting. It's collective.
So how knowledge moves between companies.
Precisely. How a car manufacturer learns from the steel plant, who learns from the mine. And the study uses a framework to categorize this. It looks at two things.
Right.
First, who's in charge? Is it the focal company, the big boss, the Apple or Ford? Or is it the non-focal companies, the suppliers, the smaller players?
So is Ford calling the shots, or are the tire guys and the windshield guys figuring it out together?
That's a perfect way to put it. That's leadership. The second dimension is the network.
Okay.
Is it closed, meaning secrets stay within that specific supply chain? Or is it open, where knowledge is flowing all over the place, even to competitors?
Got it. So who leads and how secretive are they? Now, you'd think AI just naturally makes everything more open. That's the whole sales pitch, right?
That is the pitch. But this is where the human element crashes the party. The researchers use the Technology Acceptance Model, or TAM. It's a classic framework that says a person embraces a new tool based on two simple levers.
Break them down for us.
Lever one is perceived usefulness. Does this AI actually improve my performance?
The is it worth my time lever.
Right. And lever two is perceived ease of use. Is this thing a headache or is it effortless?
The friction lever.
Exactly. And here's the core finding. The researchers clustered those 206 companies based on these two feelings and found that where a manager lands on that psychological chart predicts the entire structure of their supply chain.
That is wild. So if I think the software is annoying, I might accidentally restructure my company's entire global network.
You don't just might, you
Oh.
likely will.
Okay, let's walk through these four personalities. I have a feeling a lot of our listeners are going to recognize their own company here. Let's start with the pessimists. Low on both. They think AI is useless and hard to use.
That's cluster one. Let's call them the skeptics. And honestly, this is the danger zone.
Oh, I can picture these folks. They're still manually entering invoice numbers because they don't trust the scanner.
Or they tried some complex system 5 years ago. It failed. Is what the study calls captive supply chain learning.
Captive. That does not sound collaborative.
It isn't, because the technology is seen as a burden high effort. No reward collaboration just shuts down. The focal company, the big Ford, effectively says, fine, I'll just tell you what to do.
So the walls go up.
The network becomes closed. The focal company dictates terms. It's a rigid hierarchy. You lose all that potential innovation from suppliers because the AI is seen as a blockage, not a bridge.
So fear of the tech leads to a dictatorship.
Essentially, yes.
Okay, let's flip it. What's the utopia? Who are the people living in the future?
That would be cluster 4, the innovators. These managers rate AI as highly useful and highly easy to use.
So they see the value and the user experience is smooth.
Correct.
Oh.
And this leads to distributed supply chain learning. This is the holy grail.
Okay.
Because the friction is low and the value is high, the Ford company doesn't need to dominate. Leadership becomes shared. The suppliers, the non-focal companies, are just as involved.
And the network, I'm guessing, is open?
Wide open. Knowledge flows everywhere. But there's a detail in the data here that I found incredible.
What's that?
This cluster had a lot of very large companies, over 500 employees. And usually big companies are slower, right? More bureaucratic.
Right.
But these large companies also had a very high percentage of offshore suppliers.
Wait, that seems backwards. You'd think having suppliers on the other side of the world makes collaboration harder.
That's the conventional wisdom. But this suggests that when the tech is perceived as easy and useful, distance just stops being a barrier. The tool works so well you can afford to have this loose, democratic, global network.
The tool becomes invisible, so the relationship can flourish.
You got it. You don't need to micromanage because the data transparency does the work for you.
That's a huge insight. If you feel like you have to micromanage your remote teams, maybe the problem isn't the distance. Maybe your software just sucks.
It is a distinct possibility.
Okay, so we have the skeptics and the innovators, but life is rarely that black and white. Let's talk about the messy middle.
This is where it gets really actionable. Let's look at cluster 3. This was the largest group in the study, over 36%. We can call them the pragmatists.
Okay, what's the pragmatist mindset?
They know AI is critical, high on usefulness. They know they need it, but they score it low on ease of use.
This tool is powerful, but my God, I can't figure out the menu system.
Right. And this creates what the study calls selective supply chain learning.
Selective.
Because the tool is hard to use, the suppliers can't really drive the process. So the focal company, the one with the money and the IT department, has to step in and take the wheel.
So we're back to the big boss being in charge.
Yes, but with a twist. Because they know the tech is useful, they're hungry for knowledge. So the network stays open, the focal company goes out and cherry picks partners to learn from.
It sounds exhausting, though, like the big company is dragging the entire supply chain forward by sheer force of will.
That is a perfect description. It's an accidental centralization. The manager might want a democratic team, but the bad user experience forces them to become a monarch just to keep things moving.
The dictator by default.
Exactly.
Okay, let's hit the final group. Cluster 2. The conservatives. Let me guess. Low usefulness, high ease of use.
You got it.
Now, I have to push back a little. If a tool is super easy to use, why would a manager think it's useless?
It could be generic. Imagine an off-the-shelf AI tool that's easy to turn on, but it gives you irrelevant advice. It's a shiny toy that doesn't solve your specific problem.
Ah, so it's solutionism, an answer to a question nobody asked.
Right. And the organizational result is really strange. It leads to consortium supply chain learning.
Consortium. Sounds fancy.
It sounds fancy, but it implies a lack of strategic direction. Because the focal company doesn't see the value, they step back. They don't lead.
So who drives the bus?
The suppliers do, the non-focal companies. But because the big player thinks the tech is useless, the network closes up. It becomes this little insulated club.
So it's like the blind leading the blind. The suppliers are huddled together using easy software that doesn't actually do much.
That's a harsh way to put it, but yeah, it creates a system that's comfortable because the tech is easy, but it's strategically stagnant.
Okay, so we've got our 4 quadrants. Skeptics, fear the tech, build walls. Innovators, master the tech, build bridges. Pragmatists, respect the tech, but can't use it, so the boss does everything. And conservatives, like the interface, but hate the output, so nobody leads.
A brilliant summary.
Now, you mentioned this concept of connectivism in the notes. It feels like there's a theory underpinning why that innovator group is so successful.
There is. It's a learning theory for the digital age. Traditional learning says, I need to store this fact in my brain.
Right.
Connectivism says, I don't need to store the fact. I just need to know where to find it.
It's not about owning the knowledge. It's about having the phone number of the person who knows.
Exactly. Learning is a network of nodes, a person, a database, and AI.
Yeah.
Your intelligence is defined by the quality of your connections.
So AI is the ultimate connector.
It can be. When those innovators see AI as easy and useful, they're lowering the cost of connecting to new nodes. They're not just processing data faster, they're growing a bigger collective brain.
And the skeptics are just trying to think with their own frontal lobe.
While the innovators are thinking with 1,000 brains across the globe.
Okay, let's bring this down to earth. Implications. I'm a manager in that big pragmatist group. I've spent $1 million on an AI system. My team's struggling. I'm doing all the work. What do I do?
Don't buy more AI. That's the first instinct, right? We need version 2.0. No. You need to invest in the interface and in training.
It's a UX problem.
It is entirely a user experience problem. You are in that useful but hard trap. Your job isn't to fix the algorithm, it's to simplify the dashboard. If you can move that ease of use lever up, you unlock that distributed innovation.
And stop being the accidental dictator.
Exactly.
Okay, what if I'm a conservative? My team says the software is easy, but they don't see the point.
Then you have a communication problem. You need to show them why. You have to visualize the data, prove the usefulness. Hey, look, because we use this, we predicted that shortage 3 weeks early.
You have to sell the strategic value.
Otherwise, they'll just go through the motions.
And for the skeptics?
Well, honestly, they need to start over. They are at serious risk of becoming obsolete. If you're walling yourself off because you find tech annoying, the market will eventually just route around you.
And you mentioned this held true regardless of the industry in Brazil.
That's right. Metal mechanics, food and beverage, electronics. It didn't matter. It's not the industry. It's the perception of the tools.
So we can't use our sector as an excuse for having a bad culture.
Not anymore.
You know, it seems like AI is really just a mirror. It just reflects our own organizational insecurities back at us.
That is a beautiful way to put it. We think we're designing the supply chain, but it's really being designed by our tolerance for friction.
We're almost out of time, but I want to leave the listeners with a final thought. Generative AI, the chat GPTs, they're making interfaces much easier. You can just talk to the computer. Does that mean we're all going to naturally drift toward that innovator cluster?
That is the multi-billion-dollar question. In theory, yes. As ease of use collapses, that should democratize supply chains, but only if we trust the output. You need both levers. If it's super easy to use but it hallucinates and gives you bad data, we slide right into that conservative cluster. Easy, but useless.
It's easy to ask the chatbot, but it lied about where the shipping container is.
Exactly. The challenge is maintaining rigor while lowering the barrier to entry.
Okay, let's wrap this up. If you, the listener, take one thing away from this deep dive, what should it be?
I would ask you to look at your own team. If you feel like you're centralizing power, if you feel you have to make every decision, don't just assume it's because you're a control freak. Look at your tools. Are you centralizing power because you want to, or because your technology is too hostile for anyone else to use?
That is a haunting question. Am I a micromanager or do I just have bad software?
It is definitely worth investigating.
I am going to go check my dashboard settings right now. Thank you so much for this.
My pleasure.
And thank you all for listening. Remember, the supply chain isn't just about moving boxes, it's about moving ideas. And if your tools are blocking those ideas, you're just moving boxes in the dark. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.